Okay, so I just want to welcome everybody to today's presentation. Just a couple of housekeeping things as we get started. If you just wanted to keep yourselves on mute as the presentation is going on, then feel free to unmute yourself. You could ask any questions verbally, or if you want to keep it in the chat, I could watch the questions and ask Chantal the question. So without further ado, we'll get started. So I want to welcome our guest speaker, Chantal Gingras, who is a business counselor, and she's based in the Marathon office, and she's here to talk about building your team and the PARO GoForth programming. So welcome, Chantal.
Thank you. I'm just gonna share my screen here, my presentation. Okay, so just give me a thumbs up if you guys can see that now.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm just gonna move this out of the way. Okay. So I've used PARO GoForth to build this presentation. And you'll see while I go through it, I'm going to show you some of the stuff from GoForth. And at the end, I'll let you guys know how to join if you haven't joined yet. And if we have time at the end, I'll also give you a tour of the whole platform, not just the one lesson that I've used to come up with a presentation today. So today we're going to be talking about building your team. I've made a bit of an agenda, show you a little bit about what we're going to talk about. So we're going to look at how to make sure you're hiring the right people, creating the right teams that you need, how to keep your team in place, and keeping them happy, and making sure you're building a strong company culture and why you want to make sure you have that in place. So like I said, I've built this with GoForth. So I thought we'd start right away with showing you one of the GoForth videos. So I'm just going to go over to that here. And this video is going to go over basically different types of teams. So your team's not necessarily just your employees, but it could be your board of directors or your mentors or anything like that. So this video is going to go through a little bit about those different types of teams, what teams you might want to have, and a little bit about how to find the people for them. So I just want to make sure. There you go, share sound. Okay. Okay, so it's about 5 minutes long, and we'll go through that here.
So let's talk about some supporting teams. First of all, a founding team. As part of my business, I work with mining companies, mining exploration companies, small companies that go out and explore for minerals. And one of the first things that we're asked when we go talk in front of potential investors and brokers and so on is, who are your founding members? Who's your management team? What's their background? What's their experience? And investors would echo this in saying that they'll often invest in a first-rate team with a second-rate idea. It really is about the people. So when you're thinking of your founding team, think about who you want to be, who you want to have representing your business. A founding team consists of your business partners, your colleagues. They're people who help with product development, startup planning, and people who make pitches to investors on behalf of your business. Build this team right and don't duplicate skills. Bring in people to your founding team who have skills that complement yours. And pick people you'd be proud of to have represent your company. If your business is a one-person show, you may not have a founding team, it may just be you, but surround yourself with people who can support you in the process. Another group to look to is an advisory board. The great Albert Einstein once said that you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. And to me, that's a very important statement. We all have a certain way of thinking about things, and oftentimes it takes a fresh perspective or a new idea to come in and help launch you forward into that next step. So an advisory board can be a team of people from in your industry that aren't necessarily part of the company, have no decision rights within the company, but you've got 2 to 5 people to help you solve problems. These are people who can provide advice and guidance on issues and opportunities within your business. Ideally, they've got experience within your industry. They're willing to be open and honest with you and brainstorm to solve problems. You want to bring people into your advisory board who have a diverse set of skills. And again, ask for what you want. People are always willing to provide support if they believe in what you're doing. Mentors are also important. When you run your own business, you are the boss. The buck stops with you. Whereas when you're working within an organization, you typically work for somebody who, can provide you with that mentorship. So in a small business, again, you're the boss, and it's helpful to have a mentor who's there to help with some of the high-level issues pertaining to the industry and especially pertaining to entrepreneurship in general. As I said before, entrepreneurs really are helpful people, and they want to help others who are just starting up. So pick someone with a strong entrepreneurial background and someone that you can build a trust relationship with, who's willing to tell it like it is and not sugarcoat things or be fearful of hurting your feelings. A management board is a group of people that help run the company. Again, if you're a small startup, you're likely not going to have a management board per se, but these are people who, as the business grows, you may need to appoint people into management positions within your small business. Management board is accountable for staff and deliverables of different areas of the business. Some examples in larger companies include a chief financial officer, a chief operating officer, a chief technical officer, a chief marketing officer, and a president, to name a few. Now, professional advisors. This is an area where you need to look to professional advisors like accountants and lawyers to give you support to make sure that you're making the right decisions in your small business. Insurance agents are other examples of this, other consultants with specific expertise in an area that you need help in. And what I'd say about this is to avoid pulling names out of the yellow pages. Ideally, you want to have people referred to you by others who have used their services and can provide a positive reference. Another place to look is a chamber of commerce, professional associations, and when you do get names of people, check their references. Professional services are very expensive, and you want to make sure that you're getting what you pay for.
Okay, so that was the GoForth video on a couple of different types of teams you have. I'm curious if any of you guys have some of those teams in place already. And while I was re-listening, I was making myself some notes. I think your advisory board, if you've got a PARO circle, depending on how you've set that up, you might be able to use your PARO circle as your advisory board, because you might have some of those different skill sets in your circle. So if anyone has any of those boards in place or team members in place, just put them in the chat. I'm curious to know who's got those already. My other thought when he was talking about mentors is PARO also has a mentor moments program. And you can chat about it with your BGA or your PARO counselor about it a little bit more. But basically, the mentor moments is meant to be a really quick mentorship. So you're going to meet with them once or twice on a very specific question. So PARO's kind of put in place some of those ways to help you make those supporting teams. I'm not going to focus too much on those teams because some of them are for those larger scale up businesses. So what I wanted to focus today mostly on, and the rest of this this class in GoForth looks at is building more of your leadership skills and building your employee team, which is more likely where you need to go before hiring your managers or getting some of those higher level teams together. So the next thing we're going to talk about is leadership. So there's a big difference between being a boss and being a leader, right? And I'm sure when even just hearing those terms, you guys can come up with different things that comes to your mind. When someone's being bossy, right? That's usually a negative thing. But when someone's a leader, on the other hand, that's more on the positive. So it's similar words, but mean very different things. So I'm just going to share my screen here again. Go back to my presentation. Okay. Okay, so you can see in the little graphic I made here, on the left, there's the what we would call the boss. He's on top of the business and telling people from behind what to do. Whereas on the right with the success flag, that would be more of a leader, leading the team, helping them along. And you're more likely to, you're going to hit that success mark a little bit quicker when you're working with your team. So the boss inspires fear. The leader inspires enthusiasm. The boss says I, and the leaders say we. So that's a quote from Harry Gordon Selfridge. So just a little something to keep in mind when you're looking at how you're going to lead your teams. So when you're getting ready to lead your team, I want you to think about your vision and values of your company and make sure it's something that you're able to share with them. So come up with a few words or a few sentences, something that you can really articulate. Sometimes that's really hard, especially if you're in the startup phase, because those ideas are so big and sometimes intangible and really hard to put down in words. But it's really important for your team to know where you're going with the business and what you want to see with it so that they can help you get there. The next part is making sure you set up employee goals that are going to help you get to that vision. So make sure you meet with those new employees or your old employees if you've had employees already, and let them know what their goals are. Let them know how to reach those goals, how you can help them get there, and what that goal means for the company in general. The next thing is to make sure you raise up your team members. And what I mean by that is make sure you're giving them that positive feedback. Congratulate them when they've done something positive. That doesn't mean you necessarily need to compensate them. A thank you or a wow, good job. Just acknowledging that they've taken that extra step or that they've reached their goal. That goes a long way for people. That acknowledgement means a lot for people. And when you're the leader of your team, you're going to have to make lots of decisions. So when you're doing that, the first step to making your decision is make sure you know and understand what decision you have to make. Consider that vision and value that I've asked you to set up. And if it's appropriate, involve some of your team. It involves some of your team or your whole team, maybe even. Brainstorm on the different options you have. Come up with some of the pros and cons for those options, and then make the decision. I know it can be really scary to make that decision, but don't put it off. Make that decision. And if you find out it's the wrong decision, that's fine. Businesses make mistakes. People make mistakes. That's normal. You can pivot from that mistake and correct it at that point. So I just wanted to share a few traits that I thought about leadership as well. So when I think about leaders, I think about someone who's honest, who's sharing with their team, who's forward thinking. They have that vision of their company, where you want it to go. They're inspirational. So they're sharing with their team. You're enthusiastic about what you're doing, what they're doing, and what the business is doing. They're consistent. They're strong and able to handle stress well, or at least able to look like you're handling stress well. Put on that brave face if you need to. And it's really important, if you're the leader of your team, to show those values you want to see in your team. So if you want to see those certain values in your employees, make sure you are doing the same thing. So lead by example, as they say. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to focus most of this presentation on employees, on building your staff. And that's often, as a small business, going to be that first team you set up. So when you're looking for employees, there's all kinds of places to start looking. So if you already have some employees, you might want to be able to promote some of them internally, if that's possible. Externally, I want you to start looking at your networks. So looking at your clients, at your mentors, at your PARO circle, anywhere like that, they might have that perfect person for you. The other option is to work with your local employment office. And the reason I say that is they actually have a lot of supports in place already to help you find someone. So they can help you write your job description if you need to. They have a bank of employees that are looking, or potential employees that are looking for jobs. So they might be able to just match you with someone. Oftentimes, if they're working with somebody already, they've worked through some of those mandatory training pieces like the AODEA and the health and safety courses that all employees need. That way, when they come to you, that part's already done. You have the certificates, one less thing for you to worry about. And some of those local employment offices will help you even collect the resumes and do the interviews if you want them to. So just make sure you're reaching out to those people at your employment offices and just see what they can do and what you want them to do. You might want them to do some of those pieces, and you might want to do some of those pieces on your own as well. So another idea is to recruit from colleges or universities or high schools, attend job fairs if there's any when you're looking for those jobs. And of course, posting your job ads. So post it in the newspaper, online job boards, post it on Facebook and LinkedIn if you have those. The other thing to think about when you're looking at employees is the different types of employees. So the obvious ones are full-time or part-time, and that'll just depend on what your needs are. If you're going to have someone for short-term or for a specific project, you might just want them for a contract. There's also virtual assistants who can help you with things like booking your meetings or answering your emails or different tasks like that. You could look at an intern. And if you're looking at the intern option, just make sure you talk to your PARO, BGA, or business counselor, because there is sometimes funding available for the internships. And the last option that we sometimes overlook is looking at a co-op student. And that can be really beneficial because it gives them that workplace experience that they need, especially if they're trying to decide what kind of career they might go into. And the benefit for you is it might not cost you anything. And if you're looking at a college or university co-op student, that person might get paid partially through the school, and there might be some wage. So there might be some need for you to pay some wages too. So all depends on what you're looking for, what level of skill you're looking for, and what you're willing to pay for those positions. So once you've decided kind of what kind of job you want to hire for, you've looked at the different places you can advertise. Now it's time to actually do the hiring. So the first thing you're going to need to do is build your job description. So make sure that job description has the title, has a really good, well-written description of what that person's going to do. When they read that job description, they're going to want to know basically what they're going to do day to day, so they can decide if that job's a good fit for them. Make sure you add in what kind of qualifications you want that person to have. So, if you want to make sure that they're a high school graduate, put that in, or any higher level of education, include that. If you're willing to take a high school student too, that's fine. So just make sure that's clear when you put that description in. Put in the work hours. Are they going to be working, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, or their weekends, evenings? That's really important for people too when they're deciding to apply or not. And include the location. And the location, especially these days, could be virtual. Seems to be more and more jobs that are hiring just virtual positions. And I have a link here. So labormarketinformation.ca. That gives you all kinds of job descriptions. So if you're looking for a specific one, you've got kind of a template you can go off of and then add some of those details in that are more specific to your own business. And just as a reminder, when you're hiring, you cannot discriminate against anyone for race, gender, religion, political beliefs, sexual orientation, marital status, or disability. So when it comes to disability, you might have to do some accommodations for them right from the interview step. So that might mean interviewing by Zoom instead of in person, or having an interpreter with them or something like that. It'll really depend on the situation. What that doesn't mean is that you have to hire someone with a disability if they cannot perform those job duties. So that means if you're hiring a truck driver, you don't need to hire someone who's blind just because they've applied. But that same person, you might be able to make some accommodations for in an office setting. So it might be different technology that they need or something like that. And that's usually a conversation you can have with them. And it's sometimes easier than you think to make those accommodations. Okay, so you've got your job description ready. The next step is getting ready to do the interview. So you're going to collect the resumes, decide on the top candidates. And you don't need to have a set number of how many you're going to interview. Interview the ones that you've got the resumes for that you would consider. Obviously, the next is going to be scheduling and conducting those interviews. Try to have a second person do the interviews with you. So that could be someone else from your employees, if that makes sense, a mentor, someone from your board of directors if you have a board. And that just helps you get a second opinion and evaluate against your criteria, especially if you're going to have a couple of candidates that are really close. It might be important to have that second person just to chat with and say, okay, who is the top person? And I did put a little hint here. So GoForth in this lesson actually has an interview question bank. So if you're not sure what kind of questions you should be asking for at an interview, there's some good ones right there to start off with. And again, you're going to want to personalize that a little bit to make sure it goes with what you're looking for in your own business. After that, make sure you're doing those reference checks. When you call those references, you might all of a sudden change your mind about which person you thought was your top candidate. Someone might brag so much and give you so many of those different skills that someone didn't get out in an interview that might put them at the top of the list. So make sure you're doing that. They might also raise some red flags that you didn't realize before. And if you really need to, if you're still not sure, feel free to schedule another interview with your top candidates. Ask them further questions. Ask them to go further into your resume or look at some of those skills that you're not sure of. Especially if that's for some of those management level positions that you might be looking for. It's really important to get the right fit so that you've got someone that can stay with you long term. So the next step, you've got them hired. Now you want to make sure they stay. You've gone through that whole process. You don't want to go through it again in a couple of weeks or a couple of months if you can avoid it. So a really easy way to make them feel comfortable when you first hire them when they're first starting is if you've got enough employees, and sign them up with a buddy. It doesn't even need to be someone in their same department, just someone that they can chat with, ask questions about the company, someone that'll, take them out for lunch on that first day to make them feel more comfortable, introduce them to the rest of the staff. Just someone there that they know, at least you've made that introduction to, someone they can go to. Next, I want you to make sure you're setting up some training goals and make sure they know what the plan is for training. So if it's online modules or if it's hands-on training, let them know ahead of time what that'll look like so they can set up their expectations and check in regularly. So not only when you first hire them, but even afterwards, check in on your employees, see how they're doing. If you can, set up some regular one-on-one meetings with them. And those meetings, you can find out what's going well for them, what they're having challenges with, are they reaching those goals that you set out for them? If not, how can you help them do that? And just in general, how you can support them. They'll feel more heard, and you might get more out of them because they'll have a better expectation. They'll have a better understanding of your expectations as well. The other important part of retaining employees, and probably what most people think of, is the compensation. So so that pay, right? And I've got in a couple slides, we'll look at some different ways to compensate them. That's not necessarily just their hourly wage. You can also make sure you've got them set up to have a nice work-life balance. So, they've got regular time off, regular holidays. It depends on the industry, how to set that work-life balance up, but if that might be really important to your employees. You can look at different incentives for them if they reach their goals. And then just offering them regular training. So it could be like team building games that you're holding at your office. Could be an online course you've offered them, or you could have some formal training in person. Really depends on what their needs are, what your needs are, and what time allows in your business as well. The big thing I find for employee retainment is recognition as well. So make sure you're giving them that bit of a recognition if they've reached their goal, if they've gone above and beyond. Let them know, okay, you've got, I saw you working with that client. That was really great. You have really great customer service. Make sure they know that. Hearing that from someone goes a long way in how supported someone feels. And make sure that you have a plan if someone can't come in. So depending on your business, again, that might mean cross training if you've got a small group, delegating some of the work, and just making sure you know what you have to do if someone calls in sick or can't come in for a period of time for whatever reason, because it does happen. And you don't want to have your other staff overworked. And when you're thinking about how to retain employees, think about any job you may have left in the past. Think about why you left, what made you unhappy at that job. And it might not be pay. So I know for me, the last job I decided to leave was because I didn't feel like I was getting that support or recognition. So I would see my supervisor. I'm in Marathon and he lived in Thunder Bay. I'd see him maybe once a month, and even that once a month, to chat with him for 5 minutes, it felt like it was like pulling teeth to try to get him to sit down with me to see if I was doing well or if I was meeting his expectations. Even though I was a brand new employee, I didn't stay there very long because I wasn't getting that support that I felt like I needed. So just think about that and put that into perspective of your employees. What do you think they need to feel that support? Or to, and it could be pay, and that might not be something you can work with, right? So it's just figuring out different ways to help them feel happy in their jobs. Okay, so here's what I mentioned. We look at some different ways to compensate your team. Some of these might work for you, some of them might not. It really depends on your industry, what you do, and how flexible you can be in your workplace. So some of the financial benefits could be something like extra paid vacation days. And maybe you've got a financial assistance plan for childcare or elder care if your employees need that. You could have put together a benefits package like a pension or health insurance package. Keep in mind, usually those benefit packages cost anywhere between 10 to 30% of a salary cost. And if you're shopping for those. Make sure you're going around, just like when you're shopping for your house insurance or anything like that. Go around and get some different quotes because they can be quite different, and what they offer can be quite different. Under incentives, you could be looking at some different bonuses. So it could be monetary. It might be a gift card. It might be something like an extra day off that week or something like that. Or it could just be an email blast to everybody saying, okay, look how well that this person did. They made their goal ahead of time. Giving them opportunities. So those training opportunities we talked about, opportunities for advancement if that's possible in your organization, opportunities just to chat with you and share some of their ideas about where they see your business. Sometimes that's all people want, is just to know that they've got a say and that you're listening to their ideas. Some incentives for people might be the ability to work from home or work virtually. The last section is time benefits. So are you able to have them work flex time? Maybe they don't want to work Monday to Friday. Maybe you tell them, here you can work 35 hours a week and you choose when you work them. Again, that depends on your organization if you can do that. They might need a different leave. So they might need a maternity leave or a sick leave, a bereavement leave. And there's some of those that you need to follow in the Labor Act. But you can always increase those as well if that's going to be an incentive for your team members to stay. The other thing that your people are working more and more on, and we actually even have a high school here in Marathon doing it, is compressed work weeks. So instead of working Monday to Friday, the work week might be Monday to Thursday. And that usually means the Monday to Thursday days are longer, but you get that extra day of the weekend. So I'm going to stop sharing here for a second. I'd love to hear if anybody has other ideas for compensating or any questions on anything we've looked at so far. Got a quiet group today.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions and you want to, if you don't want to talk and you want to just use a chat, right here, for companies with many employees, employee of the month.
Absolutely. So that's the same thing, sharing that recognition, right? So you might have an employee of the month program. If you've only got a couple of employees, I don't know that you'd want to do that. They might cause some problems. But if you've got a big organization, for sure that could help. That's it. Okay, I'll go back. I'll share my screen again, and we'll go back to the presentation. Okay, so I wanted to really briefly talk about termination. So having the right team in place is really important to your success. And if you've ever had a bad employee, you know that you're spending more time on things that you shouldn't have to. You've got to clean up after them. You've got to call them constantly because they're sick, or they're calling in sick, or they're late, whatever it is, that could be detrimental to your team. So don't let them slow you down. It's not easy to terminate someone. That's a very difficult decision to make. And there are some legal obligations to it. So I don't want to spend too much time on it today, but I just wanted to touch base on it really quickly. So you might want to consider if there's other options to terminating. Maybe you can offer them some extra training or have a couple of discussions with them on what your expectations are, why it is that you're unhappy with them. If you're having those conversations, make sure you're documenting them. Because if someone's really unsure why it's happening, they might actually come back to you and try to sue you for wrongful dismissal. So make sure you have those documents to cover yourself if that does happen. If they're going to be terminated, it shouldn't be a surprise to them. Make sure they know ahead of time, give them a chance to improve. Like I mentioned, you do have some legal obligations, so you might have to give them certain notice or certain pay. The Ontario government website has a calculator, they call it, to help just determine what might be needed. So you can go through that if you're not sure. And there is some exceptions for needing to give the notice or pay. And that's for things like willful misconduct. And they use the word willful. So that's someone that knows that they're doing wrong. Neglect of duty, things like that. If you're going to go that way, you might want to go get some legal advice just to make sure you're going through it the right way and you're not going to get yourself into trouble. Make sure you know the employment standards if you're going to terminate someone. And my suggestion would be in their contract when you're hiring them, make sure you put in what those notices are. Are you going to give them a 2-week notice or more? What kind of compensation will you give them if you can't give them that notice? And of course, you have the option of having that 3-month probation period where you can terminate them and that notice and that payment is not needed. So that's very briefly termination. So the other thing that could help with retaining your employees is looking at your business culture. And what the business culture is basically your values, traditions, customs. What makes your business unique? What does it feel like to work in your business? So you can think about things like, how do you celebrate when someone succeeds or when your business succeeds? Do you have any cultural traditions in your business? Do you do anything for birthdays, for Christmas? Anything like that. So it's limited how you can actually create that culture. Usually it kind of happens on its own. But there are some ways you can try to cultivate it yourself. And that's when you're hiring someone. So making sure that they're going to fit in to your idea of what that culture should look like. It could be doing some random acts of kindness for your employees. Could have some team building activities, developing some of those traditions. So, having that Christmas party, maybe you're going to start a Christmas tradition that you're going to have karaoke at your Christmas parties. You're going to do gift giving, or you're going to, as a group, give to a certain charity, and you're going to work together and get those donations and do that at Christmas. So that could be part of your tradition. And you're going to act within what you want that culture to look, and you're going to model that. Your employees have a lot to do with what your culture looks like, and it'll likely grow and change over time. So you really can't control it completely, even if you have an idea of what you'd like that to look like. So just making sure you've got the right people that kind of fit into what you want that culture to look like is probably the easiest way to make sure you're getting what you want. Okay, so next steps is pretty much the end of my presentation. So if you haven't already, sign up for GoForth. You could do that with your PARO, BGA, or counselor. If you're on there, you'll find some worksheets and an ebook for this session. So this is part of their class 8 session. If you work on that worksheet, you can feel free to go over that with your PARO, BGA, or counselor, just to give you a chance to have a second person to go over that with you or give you feedback on what you're looking at. And that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And if there's no questions, what I'll do is I'll give you a look at what the PARO GoForth, other than the one class, the video looks like if we've got the time then. No questions? Okay, so that's what I'll do. I'll share my screen, and I'm logged in on GoForth already. Okay. So when you first log into GoForth, let me just go right to the beginning here. This is what it'll look like. So you'll have a list of all the different lessons, of all the different classes. And we're going through, you might have some of these lessons that are more important to you than others. So ideas and opportunities, if you're already in business, you already have at least those startup ideas. So you might not want to focus on that right away. If you keep looking, it might be more about marketing strategies. That might be where you're at. Today, we looked at building your team. And if you go into the first lesson of each class, like they call it, we'll go into here. You'll have that video like we watched together. Usually they're about 5 minutes or less. There's some of them that are a little bit longer. I noticed some of the legal ones are more like 15 minutes. You'll also have a little further down under the video, you'll have the ebook, a worksheet, and a quiz for each one. So I'll show you quickly what those look like. So for this class 8, this is the worksheet. So it'll go through a little bit of a definition or recap of what you worked on, and it'll give you a couple of exercises. So for this lesson, defining your corporate culture, like we talked about, what do you want it to look like? So what are some of the activities you can incorporate? Then you can, you've got your ability to make your job description in here. And then here's the interview question bank. So if you need some of those questions when you're getting ready to interview, here's some you can ask. Again, make sure you're using these as just a basis. Make sure you're making that more targeted to your own business. So that's the worksheet. There's a quiz for each class. These aren't marked. These are just for yourself to see your understanding if it helps you that way. Again, not mandatory. So you'll just go through, it's basically looks like a slideshow. You'll have a question and an answer. And then at the bottom, there, then it'll go through the answers for each question as well. So you can check your understanding that way. Each lesson also has an ebook. So this will go through lots of those details. It'll go in more detail than the videos. So if you've got more questions or weren't sure of something, you can always go look into the ebook as well. So that's how the lessons work. So that's the training. The next section on GoForth is the Ask an Expert. So we'll just click into here. So GoForth has marketing experts, lawyers, accountants, all kinds of experts that are on here to help you. So you can go through the questions that are already there. So I'm just going to pick one as an example. So is advertising effective in an early startup? We're going to look at the answer. You'll see a quick general answer. So you'll notice the experts aren't giving you very specific answers to your business, but it's a good starting point at least in there. If your question's not in there, you can add in a question as well. So the last section is the resources. And these are all fillable resources. You could go through them. There's tons of them. I haven't gone through all of them. But you've got your startup calculators in here, all kinds of, you've got a business plan template in here, a location checklist if you're looking to find a new location. Anything like that, there's tons in here. So that is basically GoForth. It's really easy to get access to it. You get access to it for free with PARO. You get 1 year access. If you weren't going through PARO, that's usually about $100. So just make sure you're talking to your PARO BGA or counselor. If you don't have one yet, if you're not working with someone from PARO, just let Lori or I know, and we can make sure we set you up with someone so you can have access to all of PARO's great resources. So any questions on any of that, on GoForth or any of the presentation?
And if you think of any questions later on, feel free to reach out, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. If there is no other questions, I just want to say thanks everybody for joining us today. And thank you, Chantal, for going through that. I mean, that's a ton of great information in that whole GoForth. I mean, I think someone even mentioned that they had been in business for a while, right? And went and used it and rethought of things that, they never really thought of and stuff like that. So it's meant for everybody. So if you can utilize it, it would be great. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I always put any of my startup clients in it automatically. And then I have the conversation with my businesses that have been around for a little while, because it's a good reminder. Some of those are just things you haven't thought of in a while and are good to reflect on, or you've been in business so long, you didn't, you never know what you need to know. So maybe it's something you just never thought to go learn or seek out yourself in there too. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for giving this information, and thanks everybody again for joining. And just as a reminder, the next presentation, if you haven't received a link and wanted to come, you could use the same link, and it's about the SNAP funding. So if you have some food product or wanted information on their grants that are opening up on December 6th, I believe, you're more than welcome to join. Or if you just wanted to get some more information about them, please feel free to join. So thanks again, and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.